Hey, what is going on, everybody? And in this video, we are going to be changing the pads only on a Porsche Boxster 718 2017. Say that 5 times fast. All right, so now what we're going to do is just get a look at this caliper right here. So I assume everyone knows how to remove the wheels and jack the car up. If you don't, you can see my oil change video on this car and you will see how to jack the car up and everything like that. But right here, we're just going to lift that tab and then remove this plug or separate this plug just like that. And then we're going to move on over to this, let's just call it, I guess, like a wire cluster. But pretty much for the Porsche brake caliper system, they give you this solid brake line that then leads into a flexible brake line, which is kind of strange in my opinion, but we just got to go with the flow here. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect another clip, and pretty much all you're going to do is stick a screwdriver in there and wait for the click. And then once you hear that click, then you can just remove the connector and it should slide off just like that. Nice and easy. All right, so now that we have that out of the way, we're going to just remove this hose guide bracket right here, and we're just going to take a screwdriver and separate it. We'll take a flathead screwdriver and just kind of separate it like that, and then it should come off nice and easy, and then you'll have your brake sensor line, and that will disconnect it from the hard line, from the brake hard line. All right, so now we have a 10 millimeter bolt, and we're just going to take a 10 millimeter socket right there and remove it. And this is the bracket that kind of holds all these wiring together, which allows for a little bit more movement from the caliper, which is going to be nice because the last thing we want to do is bend that hard line right here. So that's a very sensitive line, and if you keep bending it back and forth, it could break. So get some sort of bungee to hold your caliper. You can use a jack stand to hold it, but you can see there we have a T55 Torx bit that we're going to use to remove the caliper bolts. And we're just going to remove them or loosen them because right now we're just kind of getting everything ready for the pad removal. So I like to loosen both bolts first and then remove them. But this is just my method. I should let everyone know this is my method. There's a few ways you can go about changing the pads on this caliper. So this is not something that is set in stone and you have to do it my way. But these bolts we will be replacing with new bolts later in this video. So stick around for that. All right, so we have the bolts removed and now we can remove the caliper. Again, remember to kind of pay attention to that hard line, the hard brake line. You don't want to bend it. So right there you can see it. I'm just sitting the caliper, letting it hang on the bungee, and we're going to remove the brake pads. Now, I'm going to be reusing new sensors, so I'm just going to cut the sensors off. And sometimes they can be a little difficult to remove, so if you're going to replace with the pads with new sensors, then just cut them. That's fine. And I highly recommend to replace new sensors. Okay, so here are our new pads right there. You can see there's a lot more life, and I'm going to put this metal shim on there. And again, it's optional for if you're doing pads and everything like that. So you can see here that we need to push the pistons back in. So here's like a ratcheting pad spreader, I guess you can call it. And this particular tool is all right. It's not the greatest, but it gets the job done. And I just kind of set it in there because now what we need to do is open up one of the caliper bleed valves so that when we push the pistons in, the fluid can come out of the valve instead of going back up into the master cylinder and causing either an overflow or in some cases damage to the ABS unit. So it's good to open up one of the valves and let the brake fluid flow through the valve instead of going back up into the master cylinder area. And you can see here I have both valves open, but just for the sake of bleeding, we'll start with the inside first. And we're going to use an 11 millimeter box wrench and a hose, and we'll just put the hose on over the nipple there. You want to use a very, very tight hose so that you don't introduce air into the system. And this is just a container so that the fluid has somewhere to go and not all over your garage or the car or the rotor or anything like that. Because remember, brake fluid is corrosive and we don't want it going just anywhere. So make sure it's going in somewhere safe. All right, so you can see here now I'm ratcheting the pistons so that they go back into the caliper, and then that's going to give us the space that we need to put the new brake pads into the caliper, because the new pads have more material now, and the pistons are used to the old pads that had less material, and that's why we have to open the gap a little bit more. And if all goes well at the end of this brake job, hopefully you can open the gap on your competitors that you're racing with. All right, so now what we want to do is put some WD-40 on a towel, or spray some WD-40 on a towel and clean all the metal parts, like all those metal brackets in there, and just clean all the sliding surfaces, because it's going to make installing the brake pads a lot easier. So just get some WD-40 and clean off all of that brake dust and everything like that, and clean up the metal brackets, and that will help tremendously. All right, so now you can see here we're putting the pads back into the caliper. Again, here you can use brake grease, in certain locations. It's up to you if you want to use the grease. If not, if you like the squeak and the squeal, then you don't have to use the grease. But if you want to kind of reduce the squeal and the squeak and everything like that, then apply grease sparingly. And I'll show you in a moment just what grease that I use. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and bolt the caliper back to the car. And we're still going to use the old bolts. We're not using the new bolts just yet. We just want to put the caliper back onto the car and kind of make sure everything is fitting well and kind of lined up and seated. So you can see right here I'm using a Ceramic Extreme Brake Parts lubricant. And, you can just kind of put some, you can see right there where I put some lubricant on the sliding pins right there. Okay, so now we're going to install our brake sensor. And pretty much what this does is let you know when you need to change your pads. Again, some drivers like to use the sensor, and my recommendation is if you are just doing daily driving and you're not too aware of your car, and you want to just rely on the car to tell you when to do your service, then keep the sensor. But if you're very in tune and very aware of your car and you know how it functions and you're constantly at the track and all that kind of stuff, then you do not need the sensor. And there's ways to loop the sensor so that it doesn't let you know that you have to change the pads, even if your pads are low. So that's something to look up if you're interested in. But right here, we're going to use the sensor, and you can see that it's a pretty straightforward. You're just going to kind of install it left to right, or right to left. And then once you're all done, you're going to just put push those locking levers or locking tabs back into place. And now we're going to put everything back together. So all of the wires that we kind of disconnected earlier, now it's time to put those back together. So we're going to start by putting that main bracket back on with the 10 millimeter head. And you can see right there, I'm just getting it started. And this isn't a bolt that you want to over tighten. You know, it doesn't require a lot of force to tighten this bolt. The main thing is just that, you know, we have it on there and it's nice and snug, because we don't want to strip any threads or anything like that. So be very careful when you're tightening this bolt, and just try not to strip it. So once again, you know, just very, very moderate pressure, you know, mild pressure. Okay, so now we're going to take our clip and we're going to just connect it back together, nice and easy, just like that. And that's going to be our sensor clip for the brake sensors. And you can see there, everything fits nice and perfect. Now we're going to take our wire clamp there, and remember that connects the sensor wire to the brake line, the hard brake line, and it's just going to fold over. Now, one thing I would recommend is to swap out that hard brake line for a complete steel braid line. You know, I don't know why Porsche kind of did a little mix and match kind of thing like that, but let me know in the comments if that's something you would do, is switch out to a full 100% flexible steel braided brake line. And let me know which one you would use, Earl's, Aeroquip, or Power Stop, one of those, Brimbos. Let me know. All right, so here are the new bolts. And Porsche recommends that you replace the caliper bolts every time you remove them. So the bolts are, you know, they're not expensive. They're worth the replacement. So I would recommend replacing the bolts every single time. And you can see right there that you're going to use a T55 Torx bit to install the bolts, and you're going to torque them down to 85 Newton meters. And you don't want to over torque these bolts, because they are going into aluminum, and aluminum can strip pretty easily. So that's something to be aware of. So really pay attention to your torque setting. You know, make sure you're looking at the right torque setting, and you're not torquing it down to 85 foot-pounds, but make sure it's 85 Newton meters. Remove your bungee, and now we're on to the rear brakes. So I hope the front brake install was easy, and if you felt it was a little challenging, well, the rears are going to be very easy. And it's one thing that I like that Porsche did with the rears, is they kind of stuck to the traditional brake caliper, where you can just pull the pads out without removing the caliper. And that's something that I really like. If you're at the track, you're doing track events and everything like that, you know, it's all about speed, you know, because you want to just get everything done before that next track session. So here we can, you know, see that we have the rear calipers, and the first thing we're going to do is separate that sensor connector. So again, just pry up the little locking lever. You should hear a little clicking noise, and then just slide it out. And it's very, very easy. And then here we have this little R pin right here, and that holds this sliding pin that holds in the brake pads. So we're just going to pull out that R pin and set it off to the side, and from there we're just going to tap out this pin. So it's going to be under a little bit of load because of that spring clip. So when you're tapping it out, you know, just kind of be patient with it, and don't do anything too, you know, severe. But you can see it there. I'm just giving it some light taps, and it'll start to slide out. So, and then if you feel like it's still not sliding out, then, you can just maybe take like a paper towel with some WD-40 on it and kind of like coat the edges a little bit, but it should come out pretty easily. All right, so we're going to take that clip and we're going to clean it, or just, make sure you clean it. You can see all the brake dust right there. So clean it with some WD-40, maybe like a little Scotch-Brite pad, and then, before you install it, because it'll make the install a lot easier, and it'll be easy on your brakes as well, or your brake pads. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, we can start removing the pads. So you can see right there, there's the pin that I'm talking about. You also want to clean the pin too, because it can get dirty as well. But now we're going to remove the pads, and you can see right there that sometimes the pads can be a little difficult to remove. Sometimes they can be easy to remove. So it all depends. Let's see if we can just remove these pads, maybe even by hand, or, maybe not. But again, we're going to have to do the same thing that we did with the front pads, and that's get the hose and hook it up to the bleed nipple, so that we can vent or bleed out the brake fluid as we're compressing the pad or compressing the pistons back into the caliper. So you can see right here, it's the same procedure. We're just going to crack open that bleed valve, and now we have the hose hooked up, and now we can just go ahead and pull these pads out and put in the new pads. So you can see there, we're trying to do it by hand, and you can even push the pad. You can use the pads to push the pistons in, because that valve is open, so it's going to, relieve some of the tension. So we can just use our hands and kind of work with it, see how it just comes out just like that. And if that's still giving you a little bit of trouble, you can use a pry bar and just kind of, press them in like that with the pry bar. That'll give you a little bit more leverage and everything like that. So that'll help get the pads out just like that. And you can see the brake sensor and everything like that all comes out together nice and easy. The rears are really easy to remove and, compared to the fronts. So I wish Porsche made the front calipers like this, and I know Brembo definitely has made calipers like that in the past, so I'm guessing there's some sort of engineering benefit to putting a closed, cage on the front. All right, so now this is the best time ever. We get to paint, and we're just going to go ahead and paint some brake lube onto our brake pads. And I'm just gonna paint some clouds there, some purple clouds, and you can paint whatever you want. There's no accidents here, only happy mistakes. So now what we're gonna do is get our other pad and just paint some more clouds, some nice clouds. And you don't want to do too much. A little bit of brake lubricant goes a long way. You can see right there, I'm just going to paint a little small cloud and just kind of show like that it's blowing in the wind and everything like that. And maybe I'll put like a little bird right there, just kind of flying in that cloud. Something very nice. So however you want to do it, it's okay. And you can see right there, we have our nice, beautiful brake lubricant clouds, and we're just going to put it back into the brake caliper, and you can see right there it just slides in nice and easy. And once we're done installing the brake pads, we can take that paintbrush and beat the crap out of it. It's the favorite part of painting, right? All right, so now we're just going to take that clip and put the clip back in and get the pin ready, and then we're going to slide the pin back through, and the pin goes in, one way. So you're going to put it in the same way you took it out, and just kind of slide it back. And so if you clean the clip and you clean the pin, then it should slide in pretty easily. If not, you can maybe coat it with a little bit of WD-40 and use a pry bar to kind of, complete the installation process. After that, remember that you got to put in your R pin, and the R pin actually sits in a little kind of channel right there. So you see how I have it installed. So kind of pay attention to that. But the R pin goes in just like that, and you're good to go. So now all we're going to do is put in the brake sensor, and we'll install the same way that we installed the brake sensor on the front caliper. And they just slide in. There's really just one way that they slide in. And then you can see right there, if you're having a little bit of trouble, you can just tap the sensor in. Very, very light taps evenly. You definitely do not want to beat these sensors. You can beat your paintbrush, but not the sensors. So now that that's in nice and good, then we can go ahead and hook it back into the tab right there, and then connect our brake sensor back to the clip. And right there, you can see it just clips in. Very nice. All right, so now we have everything put together. We have our new pads, and everything looks good. So now we can do a brake bleeding. That's what we're going to do next. Now that we have all our pads installed, let's bleed the brakes. All right, brake bleeding for fixed calipers with one master cylinder. Number one, start at the caliper furthest from the master cylinder, bleed the inboard side and then the outboard side, proceed to the next caliper. All right, so that's what we're going to do. And for the Porsche 718, we're going to remove this little panel right here, and that'll give us access to the brake master cylinder. You can see it's that little reservoir right there with the black cap, and we'll just unscrew that and get that ready. So what we're going to do first, or at least what I like to do, is remove all the old fluid and then, kind of start putting in the new fluid. All right, so you can see I have a little diagram, a little car right here for the brake bleeding order. So we're going to start at number 1, which is going to be furthest away from the master cylinder. In the past, when I first started bleeding brakes, I would always confuse number 2 with number 1. So like I would start at number 2 thinking it was the furthest away, and then realize later that, I needed to start at number 1. So that's why I have the diagram, so and you don't make the same mistakes I did. So start at number 1, and you're going to finish at number 4. All right, so you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and then in terms of bleeding, you're going to bleed inboard and then outboard. So you're going to bleed the nipple that's closest to the car on the inside of the caliper, and then you're going to bleed the nipple that's on the outside of the caliper, just like that. So now we're bleeding the outside nipple, and then after we're done with that, then we'll move on to the next caliper. So you can see that I'm already initiating vacuum as I open the bleed valve, and you can see all the fluid coming out. And then when I close it, I still have vacuum applied. So this hose is still under vacuum. Everything's nice and tight, and then I move on to the next. So after every caliper, I go and I check the level, and then I add fluid so that I don't run out of fluid in the reservoir and introduce air, and then I got to start the whole process over. Okay, so now we're on to number 4. We've done all the calipers, right? We've done 1, 2, 3, and now we're on to 4. So this is the front. The first one was the rear, and now this is the front. And it's pretty much the same procedure. You're going to open up the bleed valve, or you're going to put the hose on, right, on the inside valve first. and then you're going to open the valve and you're going to start bleeding it. And we're going to introduce vacuum, or we're going to apply vacuum to the hose so that when we open the valve, air cannot go back into the system. So you can see right there, we are pulling vacuum now, and we're pulling all that old fluid that could possibly have moisture or water in it. And we are going to make sure that the new fluid's coming out. So now that we have it closed and everything like that, we're going to, wipe it down. Make sure that if you have any brake fluid spill that you wipe it up. And then we're going to switch to the outboard nipple right there. And then we're going to just apply vacuum again and pull out all of that bad brake fluid. So again, I'm just kind of wiping things down just to make sure that that brake fluid is not going to be sitting on the caliper. And, you can follow that up with some water, like water in a spray bottle and everything like that. Okay, so we're going to apply vacuum, open the valve, and we can watch all of that old brake fluid come out. And then we're going to replace it with new brake fluid, or the new brake fluid will take its place. All right, so now we're going to close everything up, and the hose is still under vacuum. And we're all set. We're going to wipe it down, make sure everything's good, nice and clean. And remember, again, can't stress enough, start at the rear, 1, go to 2, go to 3, go to 4. And remember to pay attention to your reservoir and keep it nice and full, just like that. All right, so at the end, we're going to top it off and make sure that we have enough fluid so that when we're cornering through the corners at the racetrack, we don't get that brake light that comes on and then you start panicking. All right, well, thanks everybody. See you next time.